Welcome to the Board of Education business meeting or monthly jaunt. May I have a approval of the agenda, please?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Dr. Baskin, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Shelley, would you do the announcements?
The last day of summer school is this Friday, July 29th. Thank you to everyone that has worked and volunteered to make our summer school a huge success. We would like to invite you to the summer school graduation that will be held at Beloit Memorial High School in the cafeteria on Friday, July 29th at 3 p.m. to celebrate all of our summer school graduates. Freshman orientation will be held at Beloit Memorial High School on Wednesday, August 24th from 8 a.m. to noon. And 10 to 12th grade new student orientation will also be held on Wednesday, August 24th from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. We would at this time like to have a moment of silence for all the continuing tragedies in our country. Thank you.
At this time on the agenda, citizens or delegations with areas of interest that are not included on the agenda have the opportunity to speak now. Again, are there citizens or delegates or delegations, with areas of interest that are not included on this agenda? Seeing none, next we'll have the superintendent's report to the board.
Good evening. Tonight, if they would come to the podium, we have Therese Oldenburg, community member, and we have Heidi Andre, department chair of the science department at Beloit Memorial High School. I had some conversations with board member Charles a couple months back about an interesting nexus between science, nature, and there was a conference that Therese was attending, and we decided that we would send Heidi in her role because she deals a lot with all things nature here in our district. So we're just going to have a little update from them.
We have handouts.
All right.
Well, you'll notice we don't have a PowerPoint tonight, and there's a reason for that. The whole idea of connecting to nature is to kind of let go of the technology. And the items that we gave you, we ask that you just kind of sit back, hold them in your hands, relax, interact with them, think about them, touch them. They're cool, they're soft, they're prickly, they're beautiful. And just kind of remember that as we go through our talk with you tonight, okay? I would like to thank you for sending me to this conference because I tell you it was probably one of the best conferences in my 30 years of education I've ever been to. This Nature and Children Network was founded by a gentleman by the name of Richard Louv, and he wrote a book about 10 years ago called Last Child in the Woods. And I read it 10 years ago and I thought, wow, this man's really on to something. He coined a phrase called nature deficit disorder. It's not a medical diagnosis, but it's more of a description of how our children are kind of losing their touch with the out of doors. And he decided to start looking at what does that mean for us. Now, in the meantime, he's written a lot of other books. His newest one is called Vitamin N. And this book is really interesting because it basically goes through and it talks about things that you can do as parents, as educators, as community members to help get children into the out of doors. And so those are references that I would highly recommend that you look at if you have more interest in this area. The conference was an international conference. There were 16 different nations there. Which was unbelievable. And this was not an education conference per se. So there were all types of jobs, all types of people at this conference. One day at lunch, and it was kind of nice how it was set up because you'd have lunch and everyone would just sit down at a table. And I was sitting next to a kind of a rough-looking gentleman, and he said, "What do you do?" And I said, "Well, I'm a high school teacher." And he said, "Oh, that must be fun." And we talked, and I said, "Well, what do you do?" He said, "Well, I'm the director of parks of the state of Wyoming." I'm like, wow, what conversations we had after that. So that's the caliber of people that were at this conference. And we were all kind of headed towards one direction. The other thing that I really appreciated about this conference was it wasn't like the conferences I used to go to, the Hug a Tree conference. These were based in data. Because I think the nature movement, the environmental movement, now understands that if you don't have data to back up what you're saying, it doesn't hold a lot of weight. And so there's a lot of studies they cited on the things that we're going to talk about today, which is, valuable, I guess. Emily Pels, we talked earlier, and she said you might want to talk a little bit about some of the different sessions that you went to. We had field trips. We chose to go to the Frogtown Farm and the Sun Ray Library. I went to one on integrating nature into education and expanded learning, reaching families with diverse backgrounds, learning to see science outside, promising practices from around the world, which was a poster presentation. There was probably 30 participants who brought their research into what they were doing with children and nature. So I took lots of pictures and have lots of ideas for my own classroom next year. And then getting real about diversity in the out of doors, understanding equity and inclusion. So there's, again, just a wide variety of sessions, and there was probably, Teresa, how many sessions? 40 that you could pick from. So it was really hard to pick. And sometimes you sneak into one and then try to sneak out to another one, but it just didn't work. You got into one and you wanted to sit. The lady from Australia was amazing. You just wanted to stay there and kind of gather everything in. So again, thank you so much for sending me to this conference. I wasn't pleased that it was the second to the last week of school. It was a little busy and I was grading papers at night, but it ended up just being fabulous. So the big question is, why is it important to expose our students to nature? What's the big deal? There are both academic and health benefits that they kind of focused on at this conference. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the academic benefits, and then Teresa's going to talk about more of the health benefits. The first thing these aren't in any particular order, but exposure to nature allows students to see the world and how it works firsthand, creating powerful mental structures onto which to place concepts. And I can give an example of this from my own classroom, and I know Dr. Johnson has seen me do this. In my weather class, one of the things we do is measure relative humidity. Now, normally you just do that in your classroom. But I had this idea, wow, let's do it in the classroom, but let's do it outside. Let's go to the pool and do it at the pool and see if we can compare and figure out what's going on. Extremely valuable. Now, it was a little cold when we went out in January this year, but it was, that's kind of a barrier sometimes, but it implants on those kids something different when they see how it connects them to the outside. I think, Chris, your son maybe was in my class when I took them outside. So, I know that things like that make a difference. There's also a tree line next to the high school. It's by the tennis courts. that I panicked one day. I was driving into school and I saw they were taking down all the trees along the river. And I thought, oh, good Lord, that is the only natural space that we have by the high school. I use that. We go out and we study that. We quantify that. We plot. We study what's in that area. Please don't cut that down, by the way. So there are things that we should be doing that help kids understand scientific concepts so much better when you can actually take them out and do a hands-on activity with them. Exposure to nature creates life experiences that give students perspective. You know, the world is bigger than just them. It's bigger than just Beloit. You know, it's bigger than just Wisconsin. You know, you have to start understanding where we fit and that we aren't the center of everything. And taking students outside, you give them a different view. Exposure to nature allows students to understand our place on the earth in terms of how we're connected to other things, how we impact other living things and non-living things on our planet. Again, you can talk about that in your classroom, but if you take them outside and you show them, wow, look at that erosion. Why is that happening? What could we do to fix that? You know, you again change how they're seeing the world. It expands their creativity. You know, I don't know how many of you post those beautiful sunsets that we've been seeing all summer long. You know, everybody loves the beauty that we see outside. And so why are we keeping our students from that? And it also, exposure to nature also teaches students life skills. You know, when you're out there working together, plotting a study or just playing, you gotta cooperate with one another. You know, you gotta talk to one another. You learn leadership skills. So being outside gives students the opportunity to do that. And now Teresa's gonna talk a little bit about the health benefits.
So just as an introduction to who I am, Teresa Oldenburg, citizen of Beloit. My children went to Beloit School District. I have my own business, Firepoint Media, marketing business. I founded Be Active Outdoors. It's a nonprofit to engage and encourage more people in the outdoors. I'm also involved through Beloit 2020 in the development of Nature at the Confluence, which is a project you may have heard of down in South Beloit. But this isn't a South Beloit project. This is a regional project. It's a state line project, and that is to bring back to life a neglected, derelict property and to turn it from a negative asset to an asset to our community, where we're allowed to bring children and families down and to have them experience nature. So I'll talk about that a little bit more. But I want to talk to you about the health benefits. I did give you a flyer, so this gives you a reason to get out and figure out how you can get your vitamin N. Nature, and gives you some tips and some ideas, so I just wanted to pass that on to you. But we know that nature makes us feel good, and that's why when the sun comes out, we all jump for joy and head outside, especially after a long March week when we haven't seen the sun for 5 days. Studies prove that people suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, ADHD, stress, and depression can find relief by spending time in nature. And from this conference, we learned how organizations all over the world are working to connect children and their families to nature. One session that I attended was the rise of sensory and motor issues. And it was Angela Hanscom who wrote this book. The book is Balanced and Barefoot: How Unrestricted Outdoor Play Makes for Strong, Confident, and Capable Children. She is an occupational therapist. And Angela stated that she was seeing more and more children in her practice that exhibited decreased attention issues, a decrease in strength and stamina. She has observed that children were more clumsy, more aggressive, they had more anxiety, more emotional issues, and easily got frustrated. And she pondered what was going on. She spoke to educators who had been lifelong educators, had worked for 40 years, and said, there's definitely a shift from what our children were like 30, 40 years ago to what they are now. So through her research, she found that the rise of sensory and motor issues are related to not enough body movement. Children are walking around with an undeveloped vestibular or balance system today due to restricted movement. To develop a healthy vestibular system, children need to go outside and get upside down, spin in circles, roll down hills. They need to play experiences that get them moving in all different directions in order to stimulate the little hair cells found in the vestibular complex located in the inner ear. This helps develop the balance system, leading to better attention and learning in the classroom. Another growing concern that shows that our body needs more time in nature is that throughout the world we're experiencing an epidemic of nearsightedness, or myopia. Now that would be where things look blurry far away and clear close up. The rates of myopia have doubled and even tripled in most of East Asia over the last 40 years. In South Korea, the rates among 20-year-olds have leaped from 18% in 1955 to 96% in 2011. So current research and studies have shown that the cause is not enough time spent outdoors. Originally they were thinking it was because you're spending too much time in front of a screen, but now they're realizing it actually has to do with spatial issues, that you're not spending enough time outdoors in the sunshine, focusing on different things far away and close up. So we know that we need to spend more time outside in nature. Now, how do we get there?
This is so coordinated, isn't it? Barriers can be a big problem. And I went to a session when they literally talked about what are the barriers for kids going outside and for teachers taking students outside. One of the things, of course, is that there may be threats, high crime. You know, if you're in a high-risk crime area, there could be some threats, and it's hard to go outside in that environment. There's all those little occupiers we don't like, the mosquitoes, the ticks, the poison ivy. Dr. Baskin was afraid that I handed you. No poison ivy. It may mean getting dirty or hot or wet or cold or covered in seeds when I went out to collect your plants. You know, so I don't want you to think I came here dirty on purpose. But you know what? Outside is messy. You know, if you take your students outside, they're going to get a little dirty. They're going to get a little smelly, a little sweaty, you know. And that would be something that some teachers would have maybe trouble with, or parents might have some trouble with. And that's an educational thing, you know, that it's okay to be messy. Thank goodness. And then exposure, this was so interesting that it might trigger fear in some students. And there was a gentleman who talked about a group of students that he was taking outside, and one young man refused. They were going to stay out, they were going to go out and camp overnight and then come back, and he absolutely refused. And finally, he told the teacher, he said, listen, when my family came here, it wasn't a pleasant journey. He said, it was terrifying. And so, you know, the speaker talked about, you know, cultural sensitivity, and that you have to be aware that fears that people have of the outdoors could be well-founded and legitimate, and how, you know, you have to recognize that and learn how to deal with that and help the child through that. Something I never would have thought of. Sorry. All right, so how do we get our students to weave, and our teachers to weave that outdoor into a student's day? Teresa's going to talk about a school district, West Bend, close to us, that has kind of a interesting solution to this problem.
So one of my goals at the conference was to connect with River Edge Nature Center Director Jessica Jens. River Edge is in the northern Milwaukee area. It's about a 50-year-old nature center. It's one of the oldest in Wisconsin. So Heidi and I sat down during lunch with Jessica, and she shared information about their new Naturalist in Residence program, which is in partnership with the West Bend School District. The Naturalist in Residence works directly with school staff to inspire and inform and reduce barriers to their use of the outdoors as a teaching tool. The end goal is that the outdoors is integrated into everyday activities, just as technology is interwoven throughout all subject areas. As I understand it, River Edge is actually paying the full cost of hiring this one staff member to be in the school district. It's a pilot program, and they're going to be seeking other ways to fund this program for the future. But the end benefit is that the schools wouldn't have to make the choice between less recess time and more reading time, because teachers have learned ways of transforming their local outdoor spaces into classrooms. So we attended breakout sessions with organizations that successfully develop partnerships and collaborations to strengthen their communities. And Heidi's going to talk a little bit more on that.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you as well for continuing to support our field trips out to the Welty Center. Our second graders, our third graders, and our fifth graders go out every year. And it is an amazing experience for them, and it's something that they remember until they get to high school, because they're still talking about it when they get to high school. Which tells me, either that's a really good thing or a really sad thing that's standing out in their head because we don't do enough of that. So, the partnership we have with Welty, I think, is strong, and it's always evolving. I know with the adoption of the Next Gen Science Standards, they're now looking at all their programming and how can they better fit them to the needs of the schools, and how do they support our curricula, which I think is excellent. We have the Confluence at Nature at Nature at the Confluence, thank you, that also is helping us out. But there's so many other organizations in this area that we haven't tapped into. The healthcare system. Oh my goodness, what resources would they have for us to help get our children outside? When you look at the effects of, just on obesity alone, getting kids moving more. Faith-based organizations. I don't know hardly any faith-based organization that doesn't have stewardship as one of their founding ideas. Well, that's a perfect connection, and why aren't we building those bonds? I mean, there's no law that says we can't. You build a bond with a faith-based group. I also want to talk a little bit about something that's PBL, and in the past that's been known as project-based learning. It's changed. It's now an acronym for place-based learning. And so what I would suggest is that we try and get our teachers to see beyond their classroom, so that we make the outdoor area around their school an extension of their classroom. Now, we probably can't go as far as River Edge, where they've basically have an FTE that goes to the schools and does the programming with the students and helps the teachers. I understand budgets. We can't do that. But why can't we teach our teachers to do that? Why can't we have some type of professional development where we go in and we talk about, well, this is a science landscape that you have here, or we could build a science landscape, or we could build a reading garden. One of the places that we went to was the Sunray Library. Do you want to talk about it? You want to talk about that? Oh, okay, because then I have another idea for us, too. I have so many ideas.
This is the Heidi and Teresa show. Imagine the fact that we was 4 or 5 hours in the car, and both of us the whole way up didn't stop talking, and then on the way back we didn't stop talking. We didn't stop talking the whole time. It was just so cool to have all these ideas flowing through our head. The Sunray Library was another one of the things that was on my bucket list, and it was one of the many field trips that we took. The Sunray Nature Smart Library is part of the St. Paul system. It's an older library that has been transformed into a nature-based library. It was developed in partnership actually with the Child and Nature Network. It's a prototype library, and it's a new environmental learning program that's transformed this into a community hub for learning, nature learning, and recreation. The library grounds now boasts a thriving pollinator garden. There's a little reading library nook out in the back. They have outreach tools and programs for environmental education and to engage youth and families. I think one of the more important things that I took away from this is that we might be able to reach our children in the school district, but we also need to enable the parents to feel comfortable with bringing their children to nature. A lot of them don't know what to do. If they were to take them to, say, Nature at the Confluence, they wouldn't know what to do. What do I do with my child? Sometimes maybe it's going to be turning the tables and the children's going to be the educator with their parent, or the children are the hook to bring their parent down to something. They have a really cool program there where you can check out a nature backpack and take it home and explore and do different things, little kits and whatnot in the backpack that you can do with your family. So I've also brought information. One of the other reasons I was going is it is involved with the Nature at the Confluence project. This has grown into more than just a nature center now. We're looking at possibility of the library, the new South Beloit Library moving into there, along with City Hall. So now we're developing a Nature at the Confluence campus. And the library is looking at the possibility of being a nature-based library. So I brought information back for them to take a look at and seeing how they could integrate that into their new building and programming.
So, I'm sorry, I think I picked up some bugs when I was out collecting your flowers. Little things crawling. Nice. So, when we talk about the backpack, now see, that's something that we could do in our schools. Very easy, and the backpacks were wonderful. I kind of jotted down notes, what was all in it. You know, there were books, you know, there was binoculars. There was a set of cards that said, oh, this is what you can do when you're outside, you know, to help those people who don't know what they're doing. You know, inexpensive, easy, a way to help children get families outside. And speaking of that, Big Hill Park is a city park, and it would be lovely if our city would actually run some bus routes out to Big Hill Park so people could get out there. And, you know, maybe we could even, when we do all of our field trips, I don't know if that's something that we could utilize to save cost. But it's something I think and I hope that we will explore. We're running out of time, aren't we? Pick up those flowers, relax, just, you know. We were going to give you all rocks, you know, because sometimes a nice smooth rock is like a worry stone, and you guys have a tough job. And so, you know, just grab that stone and just rub on it a little bit. You'll feel much, much better. Well, yeah, we can go on. And you know what? I would invite any of you to call me for coffee, and I'll sit for hours and talk to you about, and I'm sure Teresa would show up with us. You know, together we can do this and tell you more. But the bottom line is, can I go ahead and finish? Because I think they're getting bored. Okay. The bottom line is, what do I want our district to do? What do I see us doing moving forward? This is bigger than just me. You know, Dr. Johnson knows, Chris knows, Shannon knows, Pam probably knows, because I've had your children. And you know where my bend is, my environmental class that I teach, and the weather class, and the astronomy class, and, you know, all those things, you know, that's great, you know, and I affect those small amount of students. But this is something that's much bigger than that. It's something that needs to be a coordinated effort. And so a task force, a committee. You know, I know you've been talking about recess. And by the way, at this conference, they talked about recess. And they said, you know, more is better. But they said, you know, there's really no amount. They gave no amount of time. But they said, you know what, if you can't do the recess thing because of constraints, because they know DPI is all over the country constrain, you know, how much time you have for recess, they say use that outdoor space as an extension of your classroom and get those kids outside. And I think that's a valid point. I think that's something that we can easily do if we help train our teachers. I know Mr. Bonds probably doesn't want to do all this on his own. And so I think developing some type of a task force to see a K-12 articulation of a nature network in the Beloit schools would be a fabulous thing. So I guess we'll end. Do you have any questions or anything that you'd like us to talk more on? That'll be a big no. Talk to
I don't really have any questions, but I just want to thank you both so much. I know when Teresa told me about this, I got so excited. I said, this is exactly what I want to see come to our school district. And I have parents contact me all the time about the recess thing, and you're right. I hear we're forming a committee to talk about recess and increasing it. And so we're all moving in that direction. And there's data there that shows that we should be moving in this direction. So I just think it's great that you two went. And thank you so much, both of you.
Well, thank you for sending
going,
me.
and thanks for bringing it back to us. And hopefully, I love your idea about a task force to get this into our schools and get kids out of the schools.
Nice.
So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
Chris and then Shannon.
Sure. I just want to reiterate what Pam said. Richard Louv's book is really shaped a lot of my own teaching, and I'm so excited that you got to go to this, and I want to thank you both for your passion. You're just like overflowing with enthusiasm, and it's really exciting to see. So I'm excited about pursuing some of these things. Thank you.
I too want to say thank you to both of you. Thank you for all you do for our community and for our students and for our district. I know that this is a conversation that has been ongoing with significant gaps in between. So I think that when we looked at building Fruzen, before we thought that we would have a lot of trees and a potential arboretum and a potential place for such activities, I don't know that the discussions come back to the forefront, so thank you for bringing it back. I guess the question that I would have, because I see the enthusiasm, I know the passion's there, I know the need is there, am I hearing that we may have a volunteer to help facilitate a committee if a committee were to be presented as from the board or from the superintendent per se?
You know, I certainly expected that question from Dr. Johnson. I would be more than happy to help with that. I'm old, so I think, which is not a bad thing. It gives you lots of experience, but you know, I think this also would lend itself to bringing in some of our new teachers. You know, and help, you know, but I'll be glad to serve on the task force or committee or whatever you want to call it. But I think it's, like I said, it's bigger than just me. And if it's just me, it's just going to be me. And so, you know, throw the net out wide. Find those people that haven't been involved in anything yet and say, ooh, you know, I hiked all summer long. I did the Appalachian Trail. You know, those people are in our district, and we have not really garnered who they are yet. And so I think, yeah, but I would be more than happy to work on this. This is important. This is important.
Thank you both. I also see
Yeah.
this as an opportunity for us to further collaborate with the college. I mean, there's a lot of expertise
Absolutely.
and passion there, and I think hearing what you've presented and knowing our needs, this really seems like it could be a win for our community, as well as our students. So
Yeah.
thank you both.
Yeah, thanks. Okay.
So I just wanted to say that I like the presentation as well. What I like about it the most is it deals with exposure, and it made me reflect back to when I was in college and they took us canoeing. I had never been canoeing. I never considered canoeing. And then Dr. Anderson Levy, I connected to Ruby Payne's book dealing with social class, and some of these activities can cross different social classes. And then to close the presentation with making the connection to recess, I think was important. And Shannon, she stole my thunder when I was going to say she would be a perfect person to be on the task force. So thank you.
Thank you both. You know, so probably a couple of weeks ago, NPR had a really interesting piece about elementary school in Norway and how those kids get to be outside all winter, you know, like for hours all winter. And I think that there's something about the kind of learning that can happen when you can see it and when you can immediately apply it to your experience that can be really powerful. So thank you very much. So I'd like to go back on the agenda a little bit. I skipped over recognitions because Sergeant Bell is not here, and I wanted to say that so nobody thought I forgot that was supposed to happen. Okay, so now we're at the point in the meeting where we do reports to the board, please. Finance and Transportation and Property Committee, please.
The Finance, Transportation, and Property Committee met on July 12th. We did not have any purchase orders between $15,000 and $25,000. We did have a discussion about the city is asking for a temporary easement as well as a permanent easement on the Lenigan Creek Bridge, and we will be bringing that forth later on in the meeting. And that's all. Thank you.
Curriculum and instruction, please.
Thank you, Lisa. The Curriculum and Instruction Committee met on July 12th at 4 o'clock. Lisa Anderson-Levy, Pam Charles, and myself were present. We also had a large number of community members in attendance, which was really great to see. I hope we can continue that kind of citizen involvement. We had a presentation from community members regarding recess. Kim Schneider and Adam Aberly gave a presentation linking free play, recess, and brain development in school-aged children. They cited several articles that illustrated beneficial links between free play and student achievement. Drs. Adamski and Fromm spoke, as well as Mandy McGill and Debbie McCain, in support of free play and more recess time. Dr. Bond shared a chart that he put together with all the elementary and intermediate school principals that shows how much recess time, lunch time, and other kinds of breaks are given to our students throughout the day and at each school. After that, we had a Iron Tech update from Ryan Rui. He presented the overview of the high school's collaboration and mentoring program, which will be using a space in the Iron Tech building downtown. This space is for students that they can use with mentors and teachers to complete projects that they're working on in collaboration with local businesses. The last item on our agenda was peer review and mentoring grant proposals, but we tabled this due to time, and we'll visit it again in August. Thank you.
Policy and personnel, please.
I chaired Policy and Personnel Committee on July 12th, and we brought forth 2 policies for first reading. Well, one policy, Policy 421, entrance age, and the addition and layover of Policy 421, Rule 1, early admission to 4 or 5-year-old kindergarten to the full board for first reading. Policies for second reading were Policy 443, Rule 1, alcohol and or other controlled substance enforcement regulations. And we tabled that one for review and possible new information. Lisa Anderson-Levy moved to recommend the revisions of Policy 860, visitors in the schools, and 860, Rule 1, to the full board for the final reading this evening. We discussed a policy on recognized holidays, Policy 529.1, and discussed the possibility of changing that policy to better fit employees of, I guess, non-Christian religions, the holidays that aren't typically recognized with a federal recognition and the day off with pay. So we're going to have staff look into what other districts are doing with that, and then come back and give us a recommendation on that at a later date. Personnel recommendations wrapped up with a request from the board for a list of all employees with all benefits and fringe benefits for review. And that list, or that report, is going to come back to the board as soon as it's completed. And the board will discuss the process and how salaries and fringe benefits are set. And the meeting was adjourned at 6:40.
Thank you.
Can I just add something? I think it's important because this item was mentioned in the paper, and the administration is doing their due diligence. I think that there was an issue with technology, so I think they're saying that once technology is up to speed, they're going to get that to us right away. So I don't think it was that they were being negligent.
Thanks for that clarification. So we're at the part of the meeting where we do the consent list, which means that there will be no separate discussion of the items unless a board member or citizen requests that. So we'll begin with the approval of the previous meetings. Item A, B, C, D, E.
President Anderson-Levy, I would like to make one correction, and it's a very minor correction. I'm just having a hard time finding it. It was the curriculum meeting where we discussed recess. What page would that be on, Chris? Oh, it's been corrected. It was just a misspelled name. Thank you.
Okay. May I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to move forward with the consent list.
I'll second with a clarification. So consent list is all asterisk items. Are we also moving forward the approval of May financial summary?
Yes.
Okay. So I would second that as made for all consent items. And for discussion, if Ms. Jamie, could you help clarify on page 24, Fund 21 donation of $43,568, what that donation was?
Excuse me, what page was it?
Page 24. Correct. Correct.
A monthly combination of all donations that were received throughout all buildings. So it could be a combination of Life Touch donations given to buildings, fundraisers done at the building level. It's a combination district-wide. It's not just one particular donation.
So the reason I'm asking is we have a policy specific to approval of donations.
Correct.
And are there any donations outside, say, a PTO or a fundraiser that would have required board approval?
No, there's not.
And then if I may ask one further question. In regards to Fund 60, we have a negative expense, which is kind of a positive. Is that perhaps where we may have prepaid something, and since it is student activities funds, that the students raise fund? How do we have a negative expense and it's not a revenue?
Student activities is not a district fund, so therefore revenue and expense run through an expense account number.
Okay.
So the system is a little backwards when you look at the report. So a negative 81,000 means that we have $81,000 in our student activities. For May, we expended $12,100.
Excellent, thank you.
Could I ask one question also about this report? It's item 211 on the first page, on page 25. I asked you in an email, and I was a little bit confused when I got your answer, because does it say here? I mean,
The property taxes?
yeah, how much are we paying out in property taxes?
The property tax levy for Fund 10 was $10,109,782.
Oh, that's, okay, that's a levy.
Yes.
Okay. I was looking at some of these as expenses, and that's.
No, that's our levy
Okay.
for just Fund 10.
So that's, okay, thank you for
You're welcome.
clarifying that.
Yep.
Okay, the motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Okay. So the next item is the Lenigan Creek Bridge. Item B. Finance.
Jamie, do you want to present that again, or?
Sure I can.
Okay.
The city of Beloit has come to the district to seek a temporary and a permanent easement down at the Lenigan Creek Bridge on 4th Street by the Wellness Clinic and to our, runs into our track. And I met with the track coach and Batterman Surveys last week to confirm that there would be no hindrance on the district being able to hold conference and meets there.
And I think also just to point out that the numbers that they are offering to pay, maybe clarify how they drive those numbers or how they came up with what they would pay us.
Those numbers are based on the assessed value and the portion of land that they are taking or will be using, because there is a temporary easement there, so they're giving us money based on using our land for a temporary amount of time.
Shannon.
With the potential vacancy of this building, the one that was on 4th Street in the area of the Lenigan Bridge, by the school district, and the potential possibility of this being a saleable piece of property for the school district, did the committee consider whether or not there'd be a fiscal impact in the ability of it to be sold and what the financial implications may be to the district?
Are you talking about the wellness clinic?
Yep.
That building? That is only a temporary easement on that side of the road.
Okay.
So I think the only part that I was concerned about was the permanent easement, which was on the track side.
Correct.
And that's why we asked Coach Shaver to be sure that we weren't missing out any opportunities on that. So I was fine. I think the committee was fine with it because that was just temporary.
Excellent, great news, thank you.
So this is an action item. May I have a motion, please?
Move approval.
Second?
Second?
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Next item is policy 421, entrance age, and 421, rule 1, early admission to kindergarten, first reading.
Move approval.
Second with a minor correction. On number, I'm looking on page 38, number 5. And the last wording should be changed like it is throughout the policy to read the assistant superintendent curriculum instruction and instructional technology. All of what it currently says is assistant superintendent educational services or designee. So if we could make the language consistent throughout the policy, that would be my request for correction.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
You didn't get a second.
I second.
You second.
Okay. The next item, item D, policy 860, visitors in schools, and 860, rule 1, guidelines for school visitors, second reading.
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Item E, personnel recommendations.
I would move approval of this list of recommendations as it was moved out of Policy and Personnel Committee earlier this evening
Okay.
with the same changes.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. We are now at the place in the meeting where I'm looking for items of interest for future board meetings. Shannon?
So, trying to think if this is the right place or not, but I'm gonna take a leap of faith that it is. I'm not sure if we've all seen the news that Georgina Sundstrom, who I served with on the board, and I think I'm the only one who still has, passed. So perhaps a recognition at our next board meeting for her years of service and a tribute to all of her dedication to the district. Georgina Stenstrom, she was she had previously served on our Board of Education.
Pam?
Yeah, I would just like to, I guess, I've been pushing for this for a couple months, and I'd like to see us discuss the playground equipment or lack of playground equipment in our schools. I think some of the things that were brought up tonight with this nature talk made me think, about the tumbling and twirling and all this stuff our kids aren't able to do because they don't have playground equipment. And I know they're selling spaghetti dinners, trying to fund it themselves. I don't think it's right. I think it's a necessity for schools when we have kindergarten through grades 6 or 7, whatever. And I think it's time we discuss it, how we can make this happen. We build new schools, and they're not serving the kids the way they should because of the lack of this equipment. So I think it's important enough that we maybe just bring it to the full board for a discussion, hopefully really soon, and hopefully we can get something going before school starts again. I'd appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Nora?
I just would like to have an update on the alumni fund and how we're working with that and with the fundraising that we indicated that we wanted to make a commitment to. And I think it's important to kind of keep that on the forefront. So if we could just have an updated report on that, that would be great. Thank you.
Dr. Johnson?
And I just want to add, very apropos timing, today we did final round interviews for the potential candidate for community relations and leading that alumni effort. So Deidre and Pam Weiss and myself, we sat down and did that, and we have some references to do, but I think we'll be coming forth very soon.
Dr. Baskin?
Dr. Anaslevia, I believe that when we bring the playground discussion to the full board, which I fully support, I think it's important that presenters educate us on why it's important, because I must admit, when it was first brought to my attention, I was asking questions, why is that so important? So now being knowledgeable about it, I think it's important in the presentation to explain to the public why this is so vitally important.
Well, and I think it's also important to acknowledge that we have started this conversation in curriculum and instruction. Well, but they're related. Right.
I just want to say that I appreciate the recess thing. That was absolutely necessary, and we had a great presentation on it. But we didn't really talk about the playground equipment because that does cost money, and I understand that. But,
Right.
I mean, what's recess without playground equipment?
Well, and part of, I mean, we're not done in committee yet
Yeah.
with that item.
Yeah.
Are
Thank
there
you.
other items for future agenda? So there's one that I would like to add, and it's term limits for board members. I think that that is an important discussion that we ought to have about sort of lifetime term limits for board members in terms of years of service. If there's nothing else, then this meeting is adjourned.